Hello and welcome to the podcast, 10 Lessons It Took Me 50 Years to Learn, where we dispense wisdom for your life and your career. My name is Duff Watkins and I'm your host. Our guest today is Raj Raghunathan, who is Professor of Marketing at the University of Texas Business School. Hello, Raj. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Duff. Really a pleasure to be here.
Now, you wrote a book which asks the only existential question I think that really matters, one that's haunted me my whole life. The book is called, If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Happy? And we'll talk about that in a bit. By the way, what was it's not a new book, but it's freely available on Amazon. What's the reception to the book been like?
It's been good. Overall, it's done better than I expected, perhaps not better than I hoped. It didn't become a bestseller, but it's been translated into 13 different languages. And if you go on Amazon now, I believe there's about 190 people, close to 200 people who have reviewed it. And off late, there's been an uptick in the receptivity to the book for whatever reason. Maybe it's COVID, maybe it's something else. It's got everything that I think is important in my life. And so I'm very satisfied with it. I do think it's a tad longer than I think in retrospect it could have been. But I'm very, very happy with it.
Well, that's good. Well, now let's talk about your life. Raj, we need to talk, right? Okay. Now, You started out very well. I read your bio. You're born in a small town in southern India. You come from a good family. You became an engineer. Then you got an MBA because, that's what people do. You got the travel bug and you came to the US to do a PhD because there's nothing else left to do. Studied in Arizona for a while. That department kind of collapsed from what I gathered. Then you went to New York to finish doing your PhD, but now it's in psychology. Yeah.
No, I mean, my PhD is technically in marketing, but marketing is an applied field, as you know. Mm-hmm. And so our home disciplines tend to be either economics or psychology for the most part. And for all practical purposes, my PhD is a PhD in psychology.
Yeah, okay, because that's what I was worried about. You're doing so well, engineering, psychology. Then you join the dark side of marketing. That's what I was curious about. But so you do teach marketing at the business school, the graduate business school at the University of Texas, which is a major feat. And your specialty, one of your specialties, or a quotation, you feel that you're a conduit from scientific studies to the masses, than me, me and all my friends who don't understand the heavyweight stuff. And what you really do is you blend psychology, behavioral science, marketing, and some other stuff into a stew, I guess.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I'm impressed that you read my whole autobiography.
I liked your experience with drugs and alcohol. I thought, Raj, he should have been born in the United States. I mean, he's got U.S. student written all over him.
Back in the day when I was growing up in India, we did aspire to be kind of leading lives that we thought a lot of Americans would be leading, So we even had a name for people who managed to do it in our eyes, and they were called CATs. And CAT translated into casual American teenager. We all wanted to be casual American people.
Even I was not one of those, and I was raised in that country. Let's talk about some of your lessons. Number one, small changes have big effects.
Yeah, so this is actually from the book, The Tipping Point. Many of these life lessons that I'm going to share are actually quotes, so to speak, from other people or friends' books. Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. And he talks about this phenomenon where you keep doing something for a while and nothing seems to happen. And all of a sudden, there's a sudden change. Okay, all these small things that you're doing earlier didn't seem to amount to anything. And you might even be frustrated and be close to giving up. But if you just continue on a little bit, you explode into the next kind of stage. There's a discontinuous leap, so to speak. So this happens across a variety of different phenomena in our life. If you look at learning, how learning happens, how you become better at tennis, for example, you might, fix your serve a little bit. You might become just a little bit faster by, practicing a few of the drills. You might start dieting just to lose a little bit of weight. None of these together might amount to much. But all of these put together, given time, are the kind of ingredients in the recipe for success. And it's very, very important to remember this because we might think that there is a silver bullet that's going to come in and rescue us and take us to the next level, etc. But it's really these small changes that, obviously need to be positive changes, but these small changes that together accumulated over time that propel us into the next stage. And you can think about happiness being the same way. I teach a class on happiness. Obviously, my book is on happiness. And people often ask me, what's the one thing that I need to do? Right.
Yeah.
And I tell them that I'm really sorry to disappoint you, but there isn't a one thing that you can do. I think you can do a bunch of small things, and each of these together might have a very small effect, but together over time, they're going to significantly improve your happiness.
When I read your comment, you know what I thought about immediately was a comment by Lee Labrada. You know who Lee Labrada is?
No, I don't.
I should hope not. He's a professional bodybuilder. He's an engineer. He won a scholarship to Northwestern University. That's no mean feat. Ended up going back to Houston. He's from Texas, and he's also a successful business person. And people ask him the same thing. What's the one thing you have to do? What's the one thing? He said, it's not one thing. It's a constellation of many little things. And I've always remembered that. And we're always looking for the one shortcut, really. Just tell me one thing, I can dispense with the rest. And your point just resonated with me about that. And if people would stop looking here for the one big thing and start doing all these little tiny things and construct a constellation, good things happen so much faster.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Point number 2, science and spirituality go together. Now, there's a lot of people who take umbrage with that.
Right. I mean, and they may disagree, right? But I do think that they go together. And what is science, right? Science is the ability to understand at a deeper level cause effect relationships, and to think logically and to think rationally and so on. And often in science, what we want is proof that something works, and the ability to replicate the thing that works over time, so that over time we gain confidence and then we start to believe in it, right? If I, for example, switch the on button on my remote and the TV comes on, and I do it 3, 4, 5, 10 times, and every time the same thing happens, then I start to believe that the remote is a device that can operate the TV, right? And can switch it on. So that's how science works. And with spirituality, the idea is that oftentimes spirituality, the way that I define it at least, is this feeling that there is a more powerful source or power behind things that I may or may not be able to fully understand. And I acknowledge that the source might be running life, quote unquote, as we see it. And there's an intelligence that is perhaps bigger and more mysterious and more powerful. And what I mean by science and spirituality going together is that even if you apply the latest scientific tools in order to understand the universe and how we function, how our food gets digested, and how we, little things like I have a pain here in my right wrist, it turns out. And I went to the doctor, and I was actually kind of glad that he told me that we don't fully understand what goes on here, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that most people would say that about their own fields. They may be experts and masters at it, right? But they readily acknowledge that I'm still a student. I don't fully understand. And so science takes you up to a point, and it's obviously very, very useful. But there comes a point, I think, in every domain where you have to kind of surrender to it and say that, look, I don't fully understand this. And in particular, when I say science and spirituality go together, I can look at it at a very kind of mundane level and give you some support for it. And also at a more metaphysical, abstract level. At the mundane level, if you want to spread spirituality, right? If you want to get people to be more willing to surrender to the power that runs everything, science provides you the medium to do that. Okay. We are talking over Zoom, which is obviously a technology that science is permitted, and it's come into existence because of science. You can talk about other kinds of media like that, television, etc., microphones, and so on. And so science is helping the spread of spirituality through providing opportunities and platforms for people to do that. That's at the mundane level. And at the more metaphysical level, which is where I think it gets interesting, is that I talked some time back about this idea that in science, we want to see evidence before we end up having the belief or the faith. In spirituality, it says often that have the faith, have the belief, and then you'll start to see the evidence, right? And it turns out that science actually shows that that's true. If you think about placebo effects, it's all about that. The more you have faith that a particular drug or a procedure, a medical procedure is going to cure you, the higher the chances that you're going to see that to be true. And so in other words, science says, show me the objective proof and I shall change my subjective beliefs. And spirituality says that have the subjective belief and I'll show you the objective proof. And scientifically, it's possible to support that spiritual statement, that if you have subjective beliefs, you're going to see objective proof. Now, it's not going to happen in every single domain, no matter how hard I wish that there were two moons rotating the earth. I'm not going to see two moons unless I get really drunk or something, right? There's only going to be one moon, but there are many, many, many domains in which this is true. Henry Ford had this quote, right? He said that whether you think you're going to succeed or you think you're going to fail, you're absolutely right. Whether you think you're going to succeed or you think you're going to fail, you're absolutely right. And that very much captures the spirit of the placebo effect across not just medical domains, but beyond it, in terms of your success, in terms of your confidence, in terms of your relationships, and so on. And so I actually think that people are doing themselves a little bit of disservice by assuming that science and spirituality don't go together, when in fact, they go hand in hand and can beautifully support each other.
The psychological evidence for a lot of the power of mindset has been provided by Ellen Langer in her experiments. She too has been a guest on this show, by the way, and
Wow,
she'd be one of.
I'm a big fan of her work.
Well, yeah, I mean, as I am, and a lot of people may not know her, but she's probably one of the more quoted psychologists, period. And she talks a lot about the power of mindset. I mean, not just talk, she documents it. She pretty much, as I said to her, she's the one who helped caused it to be shifted from new age fringe to mainstream normal medicine.
Absolutely.
But that aside, back to your point, what would you consider to be spirituality? And I know I read something somewhere where for you, correct me if I get this wrong, but for you, it's all about the attainment of enlightenment, a kind of an ongoing state of bliss. And I thought, man, that sounds good. I can't wait to hear Raj tell me how to get there. So please enlighten me.
Yeah. So that is maybe the end goal of a spiritual path. But spirituality itself, like I said some time back, is the openness to the idea that we don't fully understand everything, and the acknowledgement that there is an intelligence that's running everything. And call it God, call it nature, I like this quote by another guy, kind of a Swami from India, guru from India. And he said that we are the creator and we are the creation. We are the creator and the creation. So God is not separate from us, right? And I like that. I kind of buy into that idea. But spirituality is really about that, we don't know anything, just an acknowledgement of the truth, really. And so there's an openness to accepting that we may not even know everything, at least through our mind. And there may be other ways of knowing things through our intuition, through our experiences. And that is what I mean by spirituality. I don't mean it in anything more than that. You don't have to believe in a particular God or subscribe to a particular set of traditions or anything like that. Just that willingness and open-hearted embrace of everything that life has to offer, and an acknowledgement that there may be a more mysterious and bigger force behind things. And if you do operate from that belief that you do not know everything, and that there may be a deeper reality that you can't really sense only through your senses or through your kind of power of thinking and your rational appetite, then it really opens you up to so many unique experiences. And of course, you can take advantage of some of the mind expanding substances that our nature provides, right? I've talked a little bit about it in my biography, as you know. But, there's some that I haven't tried that I'm very eager to and excited about, like ayahuasca, right? Which many people say is the mother of it all, because, it really does strip out the ego in a way that the others don't. And so you're in direct contact with the source of creation at some level. And it's very difficult to articulate what you experience through just words. But through your experiences, you get to realize that the truth is far more mysterious and strange than you could ever have imagined. I really like this book, by the way, by Michael Pollan. I don't know if you've come across it.
Yes, I have. The Omnivore's Delight is the one that I enjoyed.
Right. So that's on food, right? Mostly writes on food, but his latest book is How to Change Your Mind. Mm-hmm. How to Change Your Mind. I think it's named How to Change Your Mind. And so it's all about his experiences with these kinds of things.
Okay, that takes us to point number 3. We can't all do great things, but we can all do small things with great love. There's that love creeping in there again, Raj.
Yeah, that's a quote by, I'm only paraphrasing it. It's not an exact quote, I believe, but it's by Mother Teresa. And she was talking about how in the context of altruism even, and generosity and pro-social behaviors, sometimes the ego creeps into the picture, right? And you want to be the biggest altruist that ever was.
Yes.
Look at me giving away, can you think of a, more magnanimous person than me? And even when people try to give anonymously, it's with this kind of inner pride that I've given so much and people don't even know that I've been giving. If only they would discover that I was giving, and maybe they will after my death, they'll realize, oh my goodness, what a great soul this person was, right? And that play of the ego is very subtle and subversive, but it happens across many different domains too, including meditation sometimes, right? The whole point of meditation is to get beyond the ego at some level. Well, I shouldn't say the whole point, but it's certainly a very, very important aspect of it. And yet, sometimes you see people walking out of meditation sessions, beatific smile plastered on their face with, very peaceful looking eyes. Dude, that was awesome. How was it for you? Again, kind of subtly signaling to the other person that I really cracked it on this meditation session. I hope you did half as good as I did. I'm closer to God or something. And so what I take from this quote is that it's not as important to necessarily achieve a lot of positive change in the world and be acknowledged for it and put up on a pedestal and so on. And it's not even clear what that would be, because, everything that we do has such a big set of ripple downstream consequences that I think philosophically it's impossible to figure out, what's truly a sustainable good act versus not. And so if you just focus on your intentions to be an act of generosity and do it with as much love as you can, without really worrying about, how big or small of an impact you're having. I really like that idea. I think it's at once exhibits a sense of humility and wisdom at a very deep level.
I have to laugh. I studied with Henry Nouwen, the Dutch theologian. He said when he was in the monastery, the monks would compete to see who's fasting the most, who's got the thinnest wrist. I mean, we just can't get away from it. Here's my favorite example. I love to load in Australia. They have the CEO sleep out, where the CEO sleeps rough for one night and takes 1,000 selfies and tries to raise money. And I go ballistic every time, because I always thought charity was supposed to be on secretive, private, not a corporate sponsorship opportunity. I must have missed that memo. Anyway, disgusting. Do I rant about it on LinkedIn every year? Yes, I do, Ross. All right. Point number 4. This is interesting to me. Nurture trust in life. Trust doesn't come easy for some people.
Yeah. And we've some studies that show that we are kind of cynics by nature. And there's different ways in which the cynicism is manifested, but underlying that cynicism is what's called negativity bias. So if there are 10 different things in your environment and 9 of them are positive things and 1 of them is negative, our mind and our attention tends to go to that negative thing. And that's negativity bias in action. And that one thing is going to have a greater psychological impact on you than all the 9 other things combined sometimes. Let's say somebody listens to this podcast and 9 people write to me saying, great podcast, loved it. And one guy says, this was BS, right? And sometimes you see that on your YouTube channel that, they have like 3,500 likes and maybe 500 dislikes. But then you wonder, who are these people who dislike me? More than who are these people who like me? So it's manifested in different ways, and it's also manifested in distrust in life. And that in turn, has 2 components to it. One is because we're human beings, we really care a lot about other human beings, and distrust in life translates into distrusting other people, right? We tend to think that strangers, cannot be trusted. This stranger danger kind of an idea when it comes to kids, that if I lose something in public, like my wallet, good luck, I'm not going to find it, and so on. And what a lot of research shows is that actually people are much, much more trustworthy than the typical average person gives them credit. They're more friendly, they're more caring, they're more compassionate, they have your back, and you can rely on them to help you out in most situations. And if you extend it to life, what this means is that rather than thinking that if there's some way in which life can screw you over, it will, which is kind of like Murphy's Law, it's actually the opposite of it. That if there's some way in which life can figure out a way to help you out, like, finding life on a kind of a concrete jungle, there's a little plant that somehow butts its head out from a crack in the concrete, right? And to show you a sign of life. Life is like that. It'll somehow find a way to boost you up and prop you up if you really need that. And so what appears to be negative, challenging, and overwhelming situations actually have in them seeds of opportunities and progress and upliftment and meaning. And it's kind of up to you to decide which part you want to focus on. You want to focus on the fact that it's overwhelming and it's aiming to screw you over, or you want to focus on the part that has to do with the growth and the opportunity and the learning. And we talked a little bit about placebo effects earlier. And I think that if you have trust in life, you're going to see a lot of evidence for it. If you have distrust in life, you're going to see a lot of evidence for it as well. So scientifically, you're going to see evidence for both. The question is, which of these is more productive for you? And I'd say that if you go with trust in life, you're not just going to be happier, you're also going to be more successful and not any less scientific. So might as well go with it.
And on the placebo effect, it's vastly underrated, underrepresented. A lot of people think it's about 30%, but based on my reading of Herbert Benson, it's closer to 70%. And so again, the point being how powerful the mind is, how you frame things makes the world of difference. And I guess we should point out one reason why people are suspicious of others. There is a reptilian part of our brain, the first bit. I mean, that's the bit that's kept us alive. So I always like to pay respect to that bit that is wary of strangers and says, think about it, don't get up on that ladder, old guy, or, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that you bring up a very, very good point. The negativity bias had its use, particularly in our evolutionary past when survival was the name of the game, right? I mean, there's so many dangers around us that it's those people with the negativity bias that survived. And the rules of the game have changed now. Okay. Look around you. I don't think a lot of people are actually literally fighting for survival on everyday basis, right? There's no lions and tigers waiting around corners to devour them. There's no marauding tribes that are waiting to steal your, grains and so on. And so right now, our goal is not so much surviving, it's thriving. Okay, it's thriving. The rules of the game have changed in an evolutionary sense for a very, very long time. Our aim was to merely survive. And now mere survival is no longer in question. Okay, we're not going to die. And yet, because the vestiges of our ancestors are still in us, and those who survived had a negativity bias, so we still have the negativity bias, even though it's counterproductive for us right now. And so I'm not saying that abandon it completely and adopt a positivity bias. Anyway, even if you tried, I think it'd be very, very tough to do that. I think what we can manage to do, though, is to kind of swing the pendulum a little bit away from the negativity bias toward positivity and perhaps achieve some level of neutrality, such that if 5 people congratulate us and tell us great job, right, and 5 people say thumbs down, we feel that overall went okay. It didn't go terribly, right? Whereas if in reality, for most of us, if 5 people or out of 10 people say thumbs down, it'd be devastating for us. Okay. So that's what I'm talking about.
When you talk about the kindness of strangers, I want to say 2 examples. Twice, I have lost my passport. It's been stolen overseas in countries where they don't speak English. Both times it has returned to me through a circuitous route involving the kindness of multiple strangers. And I've gotten it back. I lost it one time in an airport in the US. And the pilot returned it to me. It's not a passport, Raj. It's a boomerang. I can't get rid of the damn thing. It keeps coming back to me. It's quite amazing. And it's things like that which give me succor, because when you get down, when you feel jaded, when you feel people are lousy, they stink. And there is so much to say about the kindness of strangers and why I think your point is when you nurture this trust in life, you are the beneficiary. You.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. So that I think is very, very important to emphasize here that it is actually strategically, if you want to think about it that way, good move to start trusting life. You're not doing life a favor. You're doing yourself a favor.
Point number 5. There is a big difference between mind attention and their attention. Okay.
Yeah. So this is in the context of mindfulness and meditation and mindfulness practice. Oftentimes people sit down or even only hear about what mindfulness is all about. And they say that this can't work. I mean, this is a waste of time, right? What, I just sit there observing my breath. What am I going to learn from it? I have so many other useful things to do. And even those who actually try to do that ended up thinking that it absolutely did not deliver at all because, I was very stressed out about a meeting and I thought that I'd sit down and practice mindfulness and people tell me it's going to de-stress me and I'm going to feel calmer. But if anything, I'm all the more riled up now. And not just that, I've also lost time that I could have devoted to that, preparing for the meeting or what have you. And I think the reason why that happens is because they haven't really understood the difference between mind attention and pair attention. And it's understandable why people often don't know the difference, right? When we say pay attention to something, oftentimes we mean mind attention in real world, right? We say pay attention to that problem or pay attention to this movie, register everything that's going on. We are asking them to kind of think about what's going on and to analyze it and come to conclusions about it and so on. Whereas in mindfulness, the idea is, even though it's called mindfulness, right? It's a bit of a misnomer at some level. The idea is not to pay mind attention to it, not to categorize it, not to comment on it, not to evaluate it, whatever it is that you're observing, but to pay bare attention. And bare attention is not barely paying attention, it's paying attention without the accompaniment of the mind. And it's difficult to do, right? So the intention is to not comment on it, not evaluate it, not judge it, not to have any kinds of value judgments on it and so on, but to pay attention to the thing in a precognitive way. Okay. Almost like a child doesn't have concepts to be able to look at a tree and say that's a tree. And so just look at it as this thing, right? That's there in front of me. And so if you manage to do that, even if only for fleetingly small moments of time, and you become better at it over time and stitch together longer and longer periods of paying better attention to something, then you start to recognize some beautiful truths, such as everything is impermanent. This is one of the kind of, fundamental truths in Buddhism, that everything changes all the time and there's no sense of permanence to anything. And that things that are giving you a lot of anxiety and stress, when you start to pay bare attention to that anxiety, which means not thinking about the thing that made you anxious, not coming to conclusions about what might be the solution to that anxiety, but just paying attention to the effect that this phenomenon that my mind is labeling anxiety is having on various parts of my body. And you start to experientially understand that your heart beats a little bit faster. You start to experientially connect through your senses your slightly damp hands and so on. When you do that, then you start to actually experience something beautiful, which is that the anxiety lasts far shorter than it otherwise would if you were to pay bad attention to it or to ignore it even. And that everything that happens is beautiful. Even the negative things, so-called negative things, are beautiful. And so I like this kind of mental imagery of two knobs, almost like back in the day, there used to be these radios, right? With volume knob and the knob to pick the channel. So the two knobs, and one of the knobs is the knob of how positive or negative it is, right? The intensity of positivity or negativity. And the other knob is curiosity. And so bad attention, what you're doing is you're turning up the curiosity knob, but in a very experiential way, not in a mind way. Whereas when you're paying mind attention to things, what it ends up doing is that it turns up the intensity of the emotions knob, which can be really bad if you're going through a negative patch, right? And so that's the difference between the two. And I think it's very, very important to understand this difference. Of course, if you want to practice mindfulness, but even beyond it, even to somebody who's not practicing mindfulness.
So let's see if I understand. So if I bring mind attention to something, I'm going to bring my opinions, my preconceptions, my prejudices. I'm going to bring it all. And I'm going to have this experience. But what you're suggesting is B-A-R-E, bare attention, simply a monitoring without preconceptions, just a monitoring of what is actually occurring or what appears to be. And that's experiential.
Absolutely. Yeah. The only small kind of quibble I would have with the way that you characterized it is that it's not necessary that mind attention is always prejudiced and is full of preconceptions. I do think that technically you're probably right, that it would be very difficult to not have preconceptions. Any thought is coming with some preconceptions and baggage around it. But in the way that we think about preconceptions, how we define it, how we understand it, there is an assumption of a bias there, etc. And so it doesn't need to be the case. And so somebody like a Da Vinci or somebody like an Einstein could look at something and think about it and come up with entirely new ways of looking at things that therefore obviously imply that there wasn't a whole lot of preconception going on, but even that would be mind attention. So I'm talking about bare attention as a way of understanding things and paying attention to things and observing things that doesn't involve the mind. It has to do with a precognitive sensory appreciation or understanding of things. So it's very much a sensory thing, just being in your body.
So is it like psychologists, hypnotherapist, one of the things that he says when he's inducting in trance is, don't try to make anything happen. Don't try to stop anything from happening. It's that sort of neutral. It's not doing, it's non-doing, I guess. And the closer you get to that, the more that is bare attention. Is that closer to what you're saying?
Yeah, I think absolutely right. So not doing anything for sure, but also doing something at a more passive level. I mean, it's not as if you're in coma, right? You are observing. So another concept here that really is very useful here to understand is that of consciousness. It's a word that often is misunderstood, and people maybe have different understandings of what that word is. The way that I'm referring to it here is the fact that we are aware of things. That is consciousness. And you could be aware of something through your mind, and you could tell yourself that, look, right now I'm in this wonderful interview and I'm aware of it. But even before you come up with words to describe what you're aware of, that is the fact that you are aware, right? So some people use this kind of physical metaphor to represent consciousness, which is a mirror. A mirror doesn't have any content of its own, so to speak, but it reflects everything around it. And so consciousness is like that. I mean, it just doesn't have any content of its own. It's just pure awareness. And once you recognize that there is such a thing as consciousness, just pure awareness without any content of its own, the idea in bad attention is to look at things from the perspective of that consciousness. And again, I mean, we are trying to describe an experience through words, and that's always a tough thing to do. But the idea is to get merged with consciousness.
That's what I'm just about to say. You know it when you're there. You feel it, and it feels good. And you're aware of your body, but you're not quite in it, really. It seems like it's maybe somebody else's body. And so we're trying to describe that. And then on this, others I'm sure have done a better job than us, but it's something to be experienced, not to be talked about, I guess. So that's the heritage discussing. Okay. Lesson number 6. You can't be happy without a healthy lifestyle. Now we're talking, Raj. Now we're talking.
Yeah, talk about going from all the way from consciousness to something so down to earth as your body and leading a healthy lifestyle. So earlier, I told you how when people ask me, what's the one thing that I can do to improve my happiness? I tell them there's no such one thing. Okay, so I'm going to go back a little bit on those words now and say that, okay, there is this one thing that I think is non-negotiable. It's indispensable. And that is that you need to lead a healthy lifestyle if you want to be happy. It won't improve your happiness right away, but the more you do it, the more you're going to see yourself uplifted in terms of your emotional life. And at a very intuitive level, I mean, it makes complete sense, right? If you aren't oozing health at a cellular level, and you're not feeling good and physically healthy, okay, there's really very little chance that at an emotional and mental level, you're going to do all that well. Okay. And I'm going to backtrack on that comment a little bit when we talk about the next lesson, by the way. Okay. So there's a bunch of seemingly internally contradictory messages, but I do think that for most people in the world, the first and very, very important step that they need to take in order to lead a happy life is to adopt a healthy lifestyle. And what I mean by that is eating well, right? And we know by and large what that is, even though there's some confusion about, what's good and what's not.
Mental stuff, not really. Not if you have access to the internet or the television or printed media. There's no confusion. But yes, I go ahead, please.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so at the kind of outer edges, maybe, some people think that meat is bad for you, and other people think that, well, and they're actually very good for you, and so on. So, but processed food is bad. Too much salt is bad. Too much sugar is bad. Those kinds of things. Too many simple carbohydrates are bad. Smoking is bad. Drinking too much is bad. So we have lots of evidence, and I think that most people would agree with these statements that I just made about what things are bad for you. Fruits are good. Vegetables are good. Not processed food is good. And things like that. So eating well, sleeping better, right? And moving more. And by the way, Eat, Move, Sleep is the name of a book by a guy called Tom Rath that I really like. It has 32 or 3-page chapters. So it's a very quick and easy read, with each chapter being self-sufficient. And he talks about all of this evidence about how to lead a better, more healthy lifestyle. And 10 chapters are devoted to eating, 10 chapters to sleeping, and 10 chapters to exercising. And so if you do these 3 things, then you're going to lead a healthy lifestyle. And of course, like I said some time back, you're not going to see these effects immediately. So back to the very first lesson, small changes are big effects. So just make a few small changes in each of these categories. And within, I'd say 6 months, for sure, it may not even take that long, you're going to see a significant boost in your happiness levels.
You can 8 to 12 weeks, you can find a measurable, discernible, look in the mirror, see the difference based on from my experience. But eat, move, sleep. Now, those are 3 things that pretty much everybody does anyway. I mean, you're going to eat, move, and sleep. So
some people don't move as much.
So why not do each a little bit better? All right. Lesson number 7. Let's fill in the blank here, Raj. The single most important thing you can do to enhance your happiness is blank.
to nurture an abundance mindset. Yeah. Nurture a healthy lifestyle. I talked about nurturing trust in life, etc. And so, as I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, that I'm going to backtrack on what I said in the earlier point. And there I made it sound as if healthy lifestyle is the most important thing. But here I want to claim that the abundance mindset is the most important thing. And for most people, I think that leading a healthy lifestyle is a kind of prerequisite to arrive at a point to understand that that alone isn't going to cut it. What's very, very important is to change the lens through which you view the world. And that lens is going to be colored by the mindset that you have. And I characterize, for the sake of convenience, mindsets as coming in two main varieties: the scarcity mindset. And people of the scarcity mindset believe that life is a zero-sum game. At some very, very deep level, they believe that for me to win, somebody else has to lose. And because they have a very strong belief in that ideology, they tend to be more distrusting of other people. They tend to be more vigilant. They tend to be greedy, or hoarding mentality. They operate basically from a self-centered perspective. And by self-centered, I don't necessarily mean that they only worry about themselves, but they could only worry about themselves and their immediate kin and the people that they really love, right? But it doesn't extend beyond it. Now, by contrast, an abundance mindset person believes that everybody can win. And in fact, that's the only way in which we can all win, that we all coexist in this. I saw this cartoon a while back where, the boat is sinking and there are a couple of people sitting on one edge of the boat, and they're just commenting on the people at the other end of the boat. And at the other end, people are frantically trying to scoop out the water and put it out. And these guys on this end are saying, thank goodness that hole is not at our end. So, we're all in this together. We all come from the same source. We're headed in the same, to the same eventual, denouement. Is that a word?
French word, the end. We're all in the same taxi heading to the same destination. It's what it really comes down to.
Right. So if you nurture an abundance mindset, and a person with an abundance mindset feels that everybody can win, then you start to kind of see life in an entirely different fashion. You're now looking at life through rose-tinted glasses, so to speak, but not in a delusional way, as opposed to jaundiced set of glasses. And you start to discover many truths, such as that helping other people out is a huge source of happiness for yourself. And being a giver, I don't know if you've heard of Adam Grant and his book, Give and Take.
He had another article in the New York Times many years.
Exactly. That givers are more likely to succeed even, right? One of the worries that a scarcity-minded person might have about adopting an abundance mindset is that that's going to lower my chances of succeeding, because the truth is life is a zero-sum game. But once they discover that that's not true, that you actually have a higher chance of success, even in conventional terms, in terms of being promoted, in terms of getting a higher salary and so on, being a giver, being an abundance-minded person is better for you, then they start to maybe, thaw a little bit and strategically entertain the idea of adopting the abundance mindset. It is by far the most important thing for your happiness.
And let's clarify too. I mean, we're not talking about some sort of Panglossian, silly ass, stick your head up your ass, pretending that the world is abundant. If I understand you correctly, we're talking about really recognizing the fact that it is a world of abundance. There's more than enough money. There's more than enough food. There's more than, name it, there's more than enough of it already in existence.
Right. I mean, I think you can say it in that way. I'd also like to add here that if you make it more personal, more than enough of all these things in existence is one way of putting it. But a better way of putting it, in my opinion, is more than enough that I have access to. Okay. When you start to think that there's more than enough in the world, then you might start to behave in a fashion that's not necessarily good. So you might say, you know what, there's more than enough goodies in the environment. Let me just burn it up. There's more than enough fossil fuel. Let me just burn it up. That's not the idea. The idea is that me, personally speaking, I've been blessed with more than enough of all the good things. Let me not crave and, want more and be greedy for more. There may be other people who don't have enough, and I'm going to be an agent of kindness for them and make sure that they get enough. But as far as I am concerned, my life is filled with abundance. So that's the idea, that I'm an overflowing cup rather than the earth itself is overflowing.
So the abundance is what I have access to abundance. You remind me of years ago, I knew a guy who was a street minister, which means he was one step above homeless. And we were talking about money. And he said, well, I have more than I need. So I guess so. I'm living in abundance. And I thought to myself, you got four-fifths of nothing from what I can tell, but he had more than he needed for what he was doing. That's stuck with me for decades now. I mean, if I have more than I need, and if I have more than I can use at this particular moment, then that's enough. So we are living in a world of abundance, and we have access to it all the time.
Absolutely.
Point number 8, be discerning, not judgmental. Raj, why didn't you tell me this 40 years ago? I could have benefited from hearing that.
Yeah. So the idea here is that the big difference between being discerning and judgmental, and I think it's beautiful to kind of delve into the subtleties of these words, is that discerning, the way that I see it, is more of a horizontal differentiation ability, the ability to detect that somebody is very good at music and somebody else is very good in sports and somebody else is very good as a manager and so on. Judgmental has to do with seeing differences along a vertical dimension, that somebody is above somebody else or below somebody else. And I think that when we aspire to live in a world in which people are respected and people are appreciated for who they are and that people are made to feel happy, there's a danger that in the quest to be non-judgmental so that people can be happy and be respected and so on, we throw away the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. The bathwater is being judgmental and the baby is being discerning. And so we say everybody gets a prize in everything. We see a little bit of that phenomenon going on in the United States for a while now, maybe catching up in other countries as well, where kids are treated with kids' gloves, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a good thing for them because they grow up thinking that I'm just as good as anybody else in anything, right? And then they face up to the harsh reality of life, which is that they aren't, right? And so I think the answer to this dilemma is to be discerning but not judgmental. And so what that means is that you convey to people that, this person is better at singing or music than this person who's better at sports and then this person who's better at something else. But even if you're not good at any of these things, it doesn't mean that you as a human being are of lower worth or value to me.
Mhm.
Okay. And the reason why you're not of lower worth or value to me is because you're a human being. And so as human being, you already, deserve the respect. And also there is a understanding that I think is very, very helpful here that goes with this, which is that everybody at some level has a very, very important talent. And sometimes we don't unearth that talent because of lack of opportunity or lack of luck or whatever, right? But I'm a huge subscriber to this idea of what's called multiple intelligence theory, that everybody is gifted in some way or the other. And just because we don't see what that gift is doesn't mean that they're not gifted. Under the right circumstances, with the right set of inputs and nurture, those gifts are going to manifest themselves. And so as a leader, as the teacher, as a parent, etc., the onus is a little bit on us to figure out what are the ways in which different people are talented. And so by being discerning and not judgmental, you're starting out with the assumption that everybody's talented, everybody's got a gift. And so there's no point judging somebody as higher or lower than somebody else, but the onus is now on you to to unearth that talent for somebody else. And on top of that, if you can kind of combine it with this ability to be discerning, then you got the best of both worlds. So not only are you capable now of identifying the best people for different jobs. If you want to build a bridge, you get the person who's best at it. If you want to throw a party, you get the best person for it. If you want somebody to sing the national anthem at a important function, you get the best person for it, rather than telling, okay, anybody can do this. So everybody's a winner. So, just pick randomly, right? I think that's the idea here, is to be discerning. And so you can kind of figure out who's good at what without making people feel worse or bad by being judgmental.
And that leads us to the next point. I know you've written a lot about feedback, the importance of feedback, and from your own personal experience. Point number 9, the 5-to-1 ratio for feedback. Quoting, she's a Brazilian psychologist, Maricel Lozada, I believe is her name.
Lozada, yeah. I believe they're Chilean, actually, and it's a guy. And this person partnered with Barbara Fredrickson, who's a really big figure in the positive psychology domain. And they came up with this ratio of 3-to-1 in the context of your personal life, that we talked about negativity bias earlier. And this has to do a little bit with that idea that because we notice negative things more and negative things tend to have a bigger psychological impact on us, the scar that they leave is big. We need to offset that negativity bias with positivity just by sheer quantity of positive things. And so if you have a negative thing happen to you, let's say that you open your wallet, you expected $10 to be there, there's nothing in there. The negative psychological impact that that loss of $10 is going to cause to you, for you now to feel above, unambiguously above neutral, you need to earn $30. So 3-to-1 ratio, they call it. Okay, the Losada ratio, 3-to-1 ratio. You need 3 times as many positive things happening in your life as you've had negative things happen for you to be unambiguously in the positive territory. Okay. And that's as far as life itself is concerned. But when it comes to our relationships, the ratios arguably even more extreme. It's 5-to-1. And there's a lot of work, not just by positive psychologists, but also by people like John Gottman, who does a lot of work in relationships and trust and so on. And what they discover is that when somebody does something negative to you, you obviously have a negative impression of them. For you to start to feel positive about them now, they need to make up for it 5 times over. So imagine that your wife told you, Duff, that, okay, let's go out to party, right? And I'll meet you at 8 p.m. at this place. And she stands you up and she's 15 minutes late. Now she needs to come early, okay, or on time at least 5 times before you're able to psychologically erase the negative effect of that one time of coming late.
First of all,
so that's the idea.
if you haven't met my wife, so that ain't going to happen, But yes, okay, I got the point. We're talking theory here. Yes, okay.
Yeah, we're talking theory here. Yeah, so there's different cultures with different time perceptions, I guess. So yeah, so and this is super important in life in general, but particularly in feedback giving. Why? Because what it says is that when you give people constructive feedback, let's say in a work context, that somebody is not doing something right, and if they were just to change this one thing, they would start to deliver much higher quality work. Okay, you want to give this constructive feedback, but of course that people don't like to hear negative things because it just makes them feel bad, right? Now, what you might do then as a leader is to call them into your office and tell them, hey, you always begin your presentations with a joke and you seem to be like really, really keen on doing it. And sometimes it just seems forced, and so you'd be a much more effective presenter if you abandon that idea that you have to always start with a joke, right? I'm just giving you an example. And you want to give that feedback and you call them into the office and you tell them, hey, I really loved what you're wearing, what you were wearing yesterday at the presentation, right? So this is called the sandwich method, right? You start out with a positive thing and then you deliver the punch, okay? And then you end with, you did a great job, right? I mean, overall, you're doing great or what have you. So that's called the sandwich method. And it turns out that doesn't really work, okay? And what this suggests is that if instead of doing that, you just cut to the chase and you give them the feedback that you really wanted to give, but it's not as if you're always only delivering negative feedback. That's also the important part, right? So abandoning the sandwich method does not mean that you get to be an a-hole all the time, right? So what it means is that the way that you're going to now give feedback is to be genuinely appreciative of people when they do good things all the time as a human being. That's your personality now. That not only do you notice positive things about other people, but you actually communicate it to them. Yeah, even if it's only small things, like, you appreciated the fact that somebody stayed back 15 extra minutes for a meeting, even though as far as they were concerned, it was done, right? Just shoot them an email right after the meeting saying that I really appreciated that without expecting anything in return, without having something negative to deliver right after it. So what you're doing as you go through life is you're accumulating a bank of positives in other people's accounts. Okay. And so that when the time comes, as it inevitably does, where you have to give them some constructive negative feedback, it's not artificial, that, you're not doing it in a sandwich method. And they know that you're the kind of guy who's generally very, very positive. And so they know that you're not being mean, you're not being an a-hole, you're just being authentic. And so that negative feedback lands where it needs to. And people actually take it seriously and they actually make changes that you want them to make. So that's the idea here.
Now, that 5-to-1 ratio may seem rather daunting to people. So my own personal suggestion is, if it's too daunting, start with 3-to-1, start with 4-to-1, work your way up to 5. I mean, 5, I find it a little difficult. I got to say, I got to find 5 good things before I tell my wife what I really want us to do. I mean, God, start sweating. But it can be a little difficult. But the good thing about having to think about it is exactly that. It stops you, so you have to think about it. And then you say, well, really, maybe I don't need to say anything at all. And you seize the opportunity to shut the hell up, which is always good advice, I have discovered.
Yeah, absolutely. And it shouldn't really be daunting. It is only daunting if you feel like you're the kind of person who A, doesn't notice positive things about other people, or B, doesn't communicate it. Once you become that kind of a person, and again, the idea here is not to become inauthentic, but authentically, the truth is that everybody's doing lots of positive things all the time. And so it's a matter of just noticing it and actually making it a point to articulate it, right? It could be the way that they presented the salad, or the fact that they did the dishes without them, it being their turn to do the dishes, or what have you, so the little things, if you just dribble lots of positives in everybody's life as you go along, then you don't even need to remember this 5-to-1 ratio, because chances are that you'll have far exceeded that ratio.
Yeah, very good. Good point. Good point. Well, point number 10, happiness is functional.
Yeah. So let me end with this. I think that at some level, this could have been the number one thing, but it's good to end on a bang. And the idea here is that a lot of people think about happiness as a desirable goal. And when you ask them, why do you think it's a desirable goal? They usually don't have a really good answer to it. They just say, just because, I'd like to be happy. And at some level, that's a totally acceptable answer, because it's almost axiomatic, right? That happiness should be important to us. We were kind of programmed to be happy, if you will, or to seek happiness. But what's really interesting is that not only does happiness make you feel good, right? By definition, happiness is a feel-good state. It's also useful to be happy. Happier people live longer. Happier people enjoy better relationships with other people, and happier people are more productive and more profitable, and they make a higher amount of money, right? The happiest quintile, the happiest 20% in the world on average make about 30% more salary than the least happy quintile. Okay. And this is not that success is making them happy. So it's not that direction of causality. We know that it's happiness leading to success and to higher incomes, because of studies that measure happiness first and then see how much they earn later on in their life. And so happiness is, in other words, functional. Happiness is useful. Happiness is practical. One thing that is stopping you from prioritizing your happiness in your life is that, hey, you know what? I will end up giving priority to happiness once I've achieved all my life goals, and once I've kind of hit all these targets that I have for myself in terms of my degrees and, buying a house and settling down and so on and so forth. If you were to kind of actually reverse that direction of causality and tell yourself that, look, those things can wait. Let me prioritize happiness first. You'll actually achieve those targets that you have a little bit faster than you otherwise might have. Why? Because when you're happier and you prioritize happiness and you become happy, you're going to show up for work more often, because you feel healthy on the inside. You're going to be better in teams because you're better at relationships. People are going to promote you, therefore, and you're going to be more objective. Some of my own work shows that happy people are more objective. You're going to be more creative. A lot of the work by Alice Eisen and Barbara Fredrickson, who I mentioned some time back, show that happier people are more creative. And so, in other words, happiness is not something that's a luxury that we need to kind of start to prioritize once all the quote unquote necessities are achieved in our life. It's actually at some level the most basic thing that we need, which actually promotes our chances of achieving these so-called necessities in our lives. So I think just having that mind shift on how important happiness is for this reason can have a huge effect in terms of the kinds of decisions that you make in your life.
Well, happiness sounds like a really good investment from the way you describe it.
Absolutely. Exactly. Right. And, the analogy here is exercising as well. Often we think about exercising is going to make us feel good. It's going to make us feel more beautiful or pretty or handsome. It's going to increase our confidence. Sure. Yeah. It's going to do all of those things, but it also increases your chances of making good decisions. It's going to put you in a better mood. And so you're going to be better with other people. It's going to activate the memory regions of your brain, so you don't need to read that memo twice. And so you can think about exercise as having all the side benefits of making you feel good, etc., and look good. But you can also think of it as an investment, because it's going to promote your productivity. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Those are the 10 things that you have learned. Now, let me finish up with one final question. What have you unlearned lately, Raj? And by that, I mean something that you absolutely positively knew to be true one time, but now know is not the case. You've unlearned it.
That's a great question, Duff. And you told me that you were going to ask me this question, and you said by the time we arrive at this point, don't worry, you'll have the answer to it. But I have to tell you that I'm not 100% sure that I have the answer, but I'm going to tell you something that may not be the best answer. And, maybe later on, I'm going to think of something else that could have been even better. But I do think this is a pretty good one. And it happened because of COVID. And the assumption that I had is that I am a very high stimulation seeking person that's only truly going to be happy if I have lots on my plate with, just almost like bitten off more than I can chew. That is what, makes me happy to be that, constantly on edge, more things to do and so on and so forth. And what I've discovered through COVID is that the sense of time abundance is super important. I looked at it with new eyes. It's so beautiful to not be like a headless chicken traveling around the world, delivering talks here, teaching classes here, doing this research here, and so on and so forth. And just to feel kind of grounded in one place. Okay. So COVID literally grounded us, right? I mean, said, no, you can't travel and you have to operate through Zoom and from your home, working from home. It's been such a beautiful revelation to me that I'm not that stimulation seeking guy necessarily that I assumed I was. I'm not necessarily somebody who gets easily bored if I don't have things to do. And there are ways in which life kind of provides opportunities in the moment in small ways. I guess the big learning is that you don't need extraordinary things. Or the big unlearning, I should say, is that ordinary moments have great beauty. And I've arrived at that learning through unlearning this idea that life needs to be extraordinary all the time. I hope I'm making sense.
Yes, it sounds like you're getting close to enlightenment, Raj. It's not like you've been reading your own book. And all right, is there anything else you'd like to leave with our audience, Raj, before we close out?
This was really wonderful, Duff. I'm very keen now to go and look at your other offerings out there, podcasts and so on, and the other guests. I'm definitely going to look up Ellen Langer. I mean, like you said, I think that, she's one of my heroes, even though she doesn't know me. I love her work, not just on mindfulness, but also on these old age home residents and how having control over seemingly trivial things in your life makes incredible difference to your psychological state and even your mortality levels. And so she's an illusion of control, her work on those areas. Anyway, so yeah, I'm really glad that you extended this invitation to me, and I look forward to staying in touch with you and with anybody else who listens to this. Please do email me and I'd be happy to respond.
Well, and we'll finish on that. You've been listening to the podcast 10 Lessons. It took me 50 years to learn. Our guest today has been Raj Raghunathan. My name's Duff Watkins. I'm your host. You've heard us. Now let's hear from you. You can email us podcast@10lessonslearned.com. That's podcast@10lessonslearned.com. You want Raj's book? If you're so smart, then why aren't you happy? You contact me. We'll find a way to get it to you. And this episode is produced, by the way, by Robert Hossery, our executive producer, and it's sponsored, as always, by the Professional Development Forum, which provides resources such as media discussions, podcasts, parties, anything you want, everything you need for young, rising leaders. And it's all free and online. Check them out. professionaldevelopmentforum.org. And while you're at it, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. It won't hurt, and you will be getting updates from us on a regular, not frequent basis. And remember, this is the only podcast that's making the world wiser lesson by lesson. So thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you in the next episode.